Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome. Happy to have all of you today as part of the discussion today. We really wanted to bring this together and then see how what's the next phase of digitization looking like for us, and what are the things that as a country we should work and focus together in terms of the opportunity that lies. That as a country we have the potential to go to about 100 and I would say about 1.5 billion transactions a day, which is about 15 trillion in terms of value. And of course, all of this is required to make a truly digital India. As we look forward. No, and there are a lot of interventions. There are a lot of technology interventions that I think a lot of organizations have brought in. And we talk about contactless, offline, soft POS, so many initiatives that we've brought in the past. But also there is a whole twist around implementation and policy around it. And really, I wanted we have Sanjeev ji here with us, from DFS. He's the additional secretary there, and really, Sanjeev ji, I wanted to bring the first question, back to you, in terms of how have we progressed, from a government point of view, from a country point of view. How do you think our digital journey has been? And what are the upcoming policy initiatives that we can look forward to? We've already heard about the acceptance guarantee fund that came up very recently, and then we're also looking at some of the other initiatives on the acceptance side. But we really wanted to understand in terms of policing in the government, what are the upcoming initiatives and how we fared up till now. So some thoughts around that, sir.
Sure. Thanks, Nalin. In 2015, when the Honorable Prime Minister launched the whole Digital India program, his vision was to remodel into India into a knowledge economy, a digitally empowered society. And since then, if you look at the sheer growth in numbers, it's astonishing growth. You know that we have more than 1 billion people who have mobile phones. Almost 500 million people or more have internet connections. So it's just the sheer size and scale of the interactions on the internet. There are, I read somewhere that more than 12 billion applications were downloaded by Indians in 2018, which is the largest in the world and the fastest growing number, I think, with the sole exception of China. So the whole journey has resulted in a tremendous amount of volume and value, not just in terms of services online, but also in terms of the entire e-commerce business base that has been growing. I also look back with great satisfaction at what we have achieved in terms of government services. Aadhaar has enrolled more than 1.2 billion Indians. The GSTN, the GST network, has actually got more than 11 to 12 million people, I am told, businesses which are indirect tax paying online onto the backbone. And this whole growth means that today, we are looking at burgeoning UPI transactions. You are looking at Jandhan Aadhaar accounts, Aadhaar seeded Jandhan accounts, which are more than 42 crores. And some of this has resulted in the greater efficiency of flows. So not too long ago, you saw that when the COVID related lockdown happened, we were able to targetedly transfer more than 31,000 crore rupees into the 20 crore women Jandhan accounts. That was stupendous. Or if you look at the astonishing sums of money that are going into farmers' accounts through the PM Kisan Yojana, and so many other related schemes. None of this could have been achieved if the vision of the Prime Minister way back in 2015 had not been translated into the kind of developments that you are seeing. First, the mygov.in app, now all these various transformations that I talked about. I think it's amazing, but we do have a long way to go. I think somewhere the estimates that are vary, but somewhere I read that we could result in more than $1 trillion of GDP being added by 2025. Now, that kind of an addition coming mainly from the digital platform would mean stupendous growth in employment generation, a lot of labor productivity enhancements, much better service delivery and improved governance. So I think the journey has been a huge experience. It has been tremendous, but we still have a lot to do. And one looks at this way to go with a lot more excitement?
No, I think this is really mind-boggling, like you said. In fact, this makes me go back to the telecom revolution that we had in early 2000, and when the policy intervention ensured that there were series of players in the market, and how the hyper competition got everybody onboarded onto the mobile part of it. In fact, it was in 2003 that I remember it was touted that India is the lowest priced market as far as mobile calls are concerned, which just about 10 years ago was the highest priced market. So I think a lot of potential, like you said, sir. And I would like to move a little bit towards what are the upcoming policy initiatives. But before that, I wanted to move to some of the other panelists here we have from the banking fraternity. We've got Rajiv here, from RBL. Rajiv, I really wanted to bring this space to you in terms of how we've sort of taken this opportunity and taken it to the market. As a bank, we all know that RBL is always focused towards partnerships and bringing in more and more new players into the ecosystem. So I just wanted to bring some perspective here in terms of how has this helped us? How have these again, I will bring an example from telecom. We looked at outsourcing to a large extent, whether it was telecom towers, whether it was the network capacity with the vendors. So how this kind of outsourcing of some of these digital services has helped us. We've certainly brought in scale and volume, and as we go forward, how, like Sanjeev ji spoke about service delivery and certain quality parameters. So how do we bring that in and sort of take it to the next level?
Nalin, thank you so much. And I think if I go back to what Sanjeev ji was mentioning, 2015, I think we also had this kind of small vision that we're a young bank, small bank. How do we create a bank which is outside the four walls of our branches, our offices, our ATMs, and even our mobile app? I mean, so how do we create a much larger impact? And we had been focused on financial inclusion from the get-go. And one of the learnings we had is if you bring simple banking services to the doorstep of the customer, where the customer is used to going, whether it's the home or the shop closest to their home or shop closest to where they normally work, I think you can solve a lot of issues which are, pretty much how you highlighted telecom. Telecom became a sachet style service very early, and it moved from what I would say a host to host structure to more a democratic structure. So this was our thinking, and I know that those days some of these protocols and networks were not as ubiquitous. We worked on IMPS, and if I today reflect back on our 5 years in this space, I mean, the scale is enormous. And what is now happening is the ease with which we are able to provide the banking backbone. Okay, you guys provide the payment infrastructure backbone, but we provide the banking backbone to our partners, because I don't think we ever imagined that we will need to create thousands of branches ourselves, because that would have taken us forever. And just why rebuild decades worth of social and physical relationships which already exist? So I think that experimentation 5, 6 years ago has now blossomed into a significant scale. So we believe that we can offer banking services to, let's say, 2 lakh 50, 3 lakh points across India. And that's not being done just by RBL alone. It's being done with partnerships. And I think that learning and that collaboration, which has now been amplified by the work NPCI and other regulatory bodies have done, because you brought a lot of protocols at much cheaper costs. And I think this is only going to expand. And I think in some manner, the simplification of things now will actually help even expanding the acquiring business to the smallest part of India, which, maybe 5, 6 years ago, how much of connectivity did they have? How much of a physical equipment that they could support commercially? But now with Android, with simple protocols and a distribution architecture which is existing, I think this is going to only go leaps and bounds. So we are quite excited. In fact, our learnings of the last 5 years is that what started as what I would call somewhat of a experimentation, in a small scale. Now we have large partners who actually bring a lot of front-end experience, service experience, risk management experience, as well as applications. I mean, so today we are able to quickly build out a kind of a milk cooperative payment architecture, because the protocols are there, and even the consumers and the small producers in this case are wanting to do it, because one thing which the good part of COVID has been that people have, especially the smaller producers, smaller merchants, and consumers have all understood, and those habits are not going to, go back. So as long as we continue building applications for not just the general masses, but also specifics which can actually accelerate, I think this initiative has, eons to run, and I think bringing back a lot of customers into the formal system, and I think there are benefits of the formal system which we have to, as formal organizations, need to address and substantiate, that you get into the formal system, more services are available. So we are experimenting on loans with some of our people, because the more data we have on payments, the more we understand the credit behavior and the consumption behavior. So to me, it's only, the 5 year kind of milestone. But frankly, now is the interesting part, when broadband, when smartphones, as well as payment protocols, and I think a lot of work around this is already in place. So we are quite positive. We also recognize that RBL on its own cannot go and create these things by itself. So this is something we have done in partnership. We've learned along the way. Our partners have benefited from our scale and banking backbone. And we would love to bring more and more applications to specific user groups and take this journey forward.
Yeah, Rajiv, I think this is very interesting. What really picks up, I would say, importance now is the era of applications. I think all of us have spent a lot of time while NPCI is focused on the payments platform, banks are focused on financial services, but really the front end applications are now what is getting picked up. And the way I think all of us have tried to standardize and create platforms. I think now the market is slowly moving towards creating platforms for services. For example, there are now platforms being created for generating merchant data. There are platforms being created to collaborate. Nandan announced a similar platform for credit sharing. Scores, information sharing. So I guess those platforms, those applications are taking shape, and there's certainly a lot of action around that. That brings me to something very important, and I want to move the focus to you, Shalini, on this. This is some of the technologies, that seem to have come in. For example, stuff that is happening around soft POS, and some of the initiatives that RBI has taken very recently. They announced banks and payment companies to experiment with offline technology. So they've given a period of a pilot till about 31st March. There are a lot of companies which are trying to do certain offline base, and this is typically offline, which is not dependent on network. How do you think, are these technologies sufficient enough? Do you think there is some limitations around them? How do you think they're going to support this journey, or there is something that needs to do something more than what we've done?
I think to your point on, it's not so much about whether it's soft POS or offline contactless or any one of these will actually expand the merchant acceptance network. And I'm confining this discussion right now, my answer to the merchant acceptance network, which is where I think we have the largest set of challenges. So I said, obviously, things like soft POS and contactless, offline contactless, etc., will only help the thing. I don't think any of us will run away from the fact that it's going to help the growth of this infrastructure. Having said that, I don't think it will be in isolation of a range of other things that will have to be done. I mean, there is no silver bullet for any of these. It's multiple steps that have to be done. Several experiments have to be tried out before we can get to understanding how to expand the merchant network. So rather than looking at whether it's a soft POS or a contactless, I think it was better to look at, kind of what are the triggers, or to some extent, what is the carrot and stick kind of stuff that we have to do to be able to get the merchant acceptance network far more ubiquitous than it is currently. And it has made a lot of progress. There's no doubt about that. And I'll probably turn to the stick first because I think it's important. I think cash is the biggest enemy of digital. As long as we continue to still see cash in thing, and with due apologies, Sanjeev, to the team, I know there's a lot of work that has gone into this, but we still see that cash is the enemy actually, so as long as cash is continuing to be available, you've got to be conscious of that fact and got to see what we can do to make cash that be a bit more difficult to get at times, because that will then turn the thing. And the pandemic has shown that, the post demonetization has shown that, all these events have shown that we still see cash being available. I mean, read articles that ATM withdrawals continue to increase. The ticket size of an ATM withdrawal has gone up, presumably because of the COVID and the pandemic, etc. So I think something around that has to be done. How do we make it difficult? And there are lots of measures already being taken. We'll have to continue to, whether it's the tax on cash withdrawal, the cost of it, etc. is thing. So having said that, if that is kind of the stick part of it, I think there's a lot done and continues to be done and needs to be done on what I call the carrot, I think the first thing is for the merchant, how do you reduce the cost? And that's where things like soft POS, etc., come in very handy, because the merchant is looking for something that's convenient to use, that doesn't take up real estate space. He's got a small little shop, and if he's got to put a POS machine, it's going to be expensive. Really, soft POS helps that cause. For slightly larger merchants, it helps in that you can do, very effective queue management, for example, with soft POS. Unlike physical POS, where you're constrained with an kind of machine, here you can literally, tellers can spring up, by the hour, depending on how the queues are moving. So yes, the merchant is looking at these as what can reduce his friction, what can reduce the kind of ease for him. It's the next sale that he needs to do, and anything that helps that will help it. The other is from a customer standpoint, it's the same issue. How do you make it seamless? And there I think the whole work being done on customer resolution or dispute resolution, reducing technical declines, reducing business declines is important. Because if you have, even 1 in 100 payments, 2 in 100 payments not going through, that particular customer gets impacted, right? So how do we make it faster and quicker is another aspect of it. Turning to banks like us, I think the big thing is, obviously, at the end of the day, it's got to make sense, right? It's got to make business sense for us. We've got to be able to invest in architecture and infrastructure which kind of takes the journey forward from a customer standpoint, from a merchant standpoint. So if you look at the three stakeholders, customers, merchants and banks, and look at what needs to be done to each one of them to smoothen it, I think it'll and a lot of work has been done, a lot more needs to be done to get that forward. As I said, I think there'll be a lot of experiments we need to try. I think I heard Rajiv mention something about the milk cooperative. We're doing something similar here, for example, in Kerala. We've tied up with a company to actually do QR codes for auto rickshaw drivers. And it's something that is dear to our heart, because we want to make sure that it becomes contactless as well as digital. And we've actually started, we've got 1,000 auto rickshaw drivers already on the QR code, the UPI QR, and they're accepting payments through that. If all goes well in the next 6 months, all of Kerala's auto rickshaw drivers will have a QR code. That's, I think, about 2 lakh numbers is what I was told. So, that's a small experiment that we've tried. It does involve a lot of education. It involves a lot of hand-holding. And we have a partner who's working very closely with us with huge help from the government agencies that are involved, like the Motor Vehicles Department, etc. So, the broader point I'm making, Nalin, is that no one thing will get us where we have. We've got to take a series of measures, try some experiments. Some may work, some may not work, but be able to keep continually experimenting and move the journey forward.
No, thank you, Shalini. I think the key thing that I guess everybody would agree to is that bringing the carrot before the stick, and reducing the cost for the merchant, for somebody for whom typically banking services means additional cost, additional headache, and additional burden. And unless that we are able to sort of get that positioning right, I think that super acceptance of devices and digital payments may not
Yeah.
will still always be a challenge. So that sort of brings me to Pralay. I wanted to bring. We've spoken about the technology part of it, but I really wanted to get some thoughts from you. Was on what are the current challenges? So Shalini spoke about, of course, cost being as one of the challenge, commercials being as one of the challenge, and that always remains to be. But if we keep that aside, and we want to really look at from an ecosystem perspective, from a from an architecture perspective, what are the current challenges that we have in acceptance? So really, I guess everybody believes that the consumer is now whether it is through Aadhaar, Sanjeev spoke about it, or is it through a Jan Dhan account, or through a RuPay card, or through some of these methods, the consumer has some form of digital payment that he can do. But it's really the merchant story that needs to get built in. And we all believe going from 5 million to 50 million is extremely crucial. So what do you think are the current ground challenges which are restricting these digital payments, while commercial being the one that that the ecosystem needs to focus on?
It's a question of which time we are talking about. I know when others are talking about 2003 and 2015. So it took me back because I have been associated with this payment industry in some form or the other from early 2000. And I've seen how this space has evolved over a period of time. It's unbelievable. And there's a time when papers were written about the Korea model, for example, and I myself went to Korea and met the regulators there and understood how they work and how the large monoline businesses are running there, both on the acquiring side and issuance side, and how they sort of what Shalini mentioned, the stick approach was used on both sides, both on the merchants and the customer side in a way. Stick and carrot for the customers and stick for the merchants as the way. And how they eventually move very fast, went to a level which is unprecedented, and then disaster hit them, they came back, and so on and so forth. But in India, fortunately, we took a very different model. And going back to early 2000, I can tell you that the primary discussion, the same question, if you had asked me, I would have said that, how do you go into deeper geography? What is cost of a POS machine? What are the, enablers which companies and banks will do, because banks will always look at expansion plus profit, so where the cost comes from. And it takes me to all those crazy discussions we used to have those days. And it was not moving. And then I remember Mr. Hota, who was the then chairman in NPCI, and I had a lot of discussions with him those days in his office, in my office, and Dilip was also there at that time. We were struggling to figure out how to take this forward. And one fine day, as they say, that disruptions happens suddenly, right? And it happened. And after that, it is history that how the entire UPI platform, on a simple platform of IMPS, how it took off. And then everybody started talking about it. Initial days, there are some challenges, risk challenges. There are some apprehensions, and such a simple technology, can it really take care of such a huge load? And time says that India always done something unique, very different, very simple, because in a democracy like this, that works. And I'm very happy where we are sitting today, if you ask me. Of course, there are challenges. You wanted to be me to talk about the challenges, but before that, I want to say the good things which we all did together, and NPCI being one of the largest enablers, and in that journey. And I was reading the today or yesterday, I mean, few days back, Dilip talking about expected 1 billion transaction in the next 2 to 3 days per day. I said, wow, I mean, this is absolutely amazing, if this happens and the way we are moving. So I'm very, very positive, very optimistic, and things are moving very fast. Having said that, the other thing, if I have to bring in the consumer side of the story a little bit, because we are talking about technology here, but I think ultimately who are the decision makers? The decision maker will be the consumer and people and the merchants, and both has to have win-win in the whole situation, and banks will be enablers, and banks will be forced to be enablers when consumers are asking for it and merchants are asking for it, because we are intermediaries at the end of the day. So given that perspective, I think what we are seeing is the mobility platform really helped. The QR, for example, I mean, I was never a great believer of a closed loop wallet, but once it started getting interoperable, once the whole, QR code, for example, once it becomes interoperable and open loop and so on and so forth, we saw that things are moving, and ease of usage is mostly on digital platforms. It's always the journey, the ease of use, which makes a difference. And once the QR is becoming on multi-platform, it can be for, as Shalini was talking about, auto rickshaw can be a single platform, or it can be on a POS device also, you can use it, or on the mobile, you can, even if the QR code this thing is not there with the merchant, he can generate and send it to the customers, and then they can use it. I mean, there's so many ways and means things are moving up in the system. And as a customer, I can tell you, disruptions like demonetization and right now, and this is going on a little longer, and nobody knows how long it will go. And hence, this is almost forcing people to learn. For example, you call up a grocery shop, they deliver at home, and you pay through, digital mode, because you don't want to touch cash. Many of the buildings, they can't even come inside, so you have to make the payment. So all of these, whether you are using through the IFSC, you are using funds transfer to the merchant account, or you are using a digital mode of payments by sending to the wallets of the merchants. I think there are various modes which are coming up. So, and today I see a significant shift in the merchants, smaller merchants mindset, and they are willing to take digital payments because they have finally understood the cost of carrying cash. And with some of these other enablers like GST and all of this, people are going to, there is a tipping point when people will start moving towards that direction. So what Korea did in a very short time, I think we did in a longer term, but still long way to go. So let me now address your question, because I'm very positive on this. So I will automatically talk about the good things. But yes, there are challenges. And to start with, very strangely, the challenge is not necessarily coming either from merchants or from customers or from banks. It's coming from mobility itself. Because, for example, if your network doesn't work properly, okay, the Wi-Fi or some of the broadband doesn't work at times, then it can create a little bit of a challenge. So, for example, a consumer experience, if you go wants to make a payment, and it happened to me personally, I went into the grocery shop, then I had to come out on the road and make that payment because somehow the network was not catching there inside the shop. I mean, I'm giving practical stuff, right? Then second time, because I was like very clear I have to do it, so I came out. But somebody else will say, okay, there is a cash in the wallet, so let me pay it off. So these small things. So I think mobility and network availability is going to be a very important enabler for not only for merchant payments, but for Digital India vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. I think that's extremely important. Second is, still there is some amount of unwillingness to take payments in digital form, especially the larger transactions in certain hospitals and certain, still, I think that smaller transactions are going through. Some of the larger transactions are still not going through. It's not very rare that somebody will say that we'll charge you 1% extra and things like that. And there I agree with Shalini that we need to, finally time has come when we have to take a stick approach, because that's just not done. Okay, so that's the second part of the issues. The third is coming back to mobility. There are still there are a lot of feature phones in the country today. Okay. Now, it's not that you cannot do a digital payment through feature phone. There are those technologies available, but naturally, as the price of smartphones are coming down and as people adapt to the smartphones more and more, I think that's where another challenge we have, and that will enable, and that will be more true for deeper geographies and the bottom of the pyramid and so on and so forth. Of course, Google and Google Pay and Phone Pay and all these guys are doing a lot of stuff, but still, with it is much more easier to be on the smartphone to do this. And last is, I think this is where all of us have to work, and banks have a huge amount of responsibility along with everybody in the ecosystem is customer education and merchant education. We have to, even if it is good, even if it is beneficial, even if it is convenient, unless you do it once or twice, you don't know it is convenient. So customer education and enablement to make that happen is going to make a lot of difference. So I think these 3-4 things which we need to do, but I'm a great believer the way things are moving. Still coming to Shalini's point, if you look at it, even this year's data as we are talking today, the UPI growth is much faster than any other channel's growth, whether it is ATMs, whether it is any other channels we're talking about. But still, is it enough? The answer is no. And the other thing is, while small transactions are happening, I think we need to focus on, as an intermediary, the next big transactions. And that's where I agree with Shalini that what is it that we need to de-incentivize cash? Okay. And this is where I think banks have some responsibilities along with enablements coming from government, which is how do you ensure that cash gets priced more, and we have to bring down, because the larger transactions by volumes this is going up, but by value the largest transactions are still happening on cash, which is taking the cash component to a fairly high level again right now. So we need to all put our thinking cap on and start working on that.
Yeah, thank you, Pralay. I think quite a few action items for all of us. I would say, from starting from mobility to finding a solution to feature phone. I think that is going to be that's always been a very interesting problem to solve, and it continues to evade us. But I guess that's an area I think we all should focus on. And I completely agree with you. And I think customer education and the disincentivizing of cash, while certain payment modes can, we've all seen that with reduced pricing also, there is still hesitation in the mind of the consumer. So everything has to work together. One or two things may not be enough, but everything has to sort of come together for them to start adopting. I really wanted to sort of conclude with certain thoughts and some quick, I would say, wish list from all of you. And we've got Sanjeevji here, so I think we can all have our wish list. And I really wanted to bring into the next part of our discussion, and very quickly, what we all of us are hoping in, we are focusing towards from taking from 5 million to about 50 million acceptance points. And we're all calling this internally as 5 se 50. So, for us to sort of achieve that target, and picking up from all of you, there are broadly 3 broad areas that I can, we sort of are talking about here. One which are government and policy led, whether these are GST network, Aadhaar network, or was the Acceptance Development Fund, and some of the other initiatives Sanjeevji spoke about, the PM Kisan scheme, and then the Jan Dhan accounts and other things. So that's one area. The other area are market-led, whether it was OCN, which was recently announced. There is BBPS. There are some of the other market-led platforms which have evolved over a period of time. And then, of course, there is the technology part of it, where we spoke about Android-based devices. Rajeevji spoke about bringing the cost down through that. Pralayji, you spoke about disincentivizing cash. There is soft pause and some of the other technology, interventions that we keep bringing in. But honestly, and then of course, then fourth part is on service delivery. Shalini spoke about the TDs and the BDs. Actually, more BDs because there is still a lot of new application and transactions that keep. If I remember correctly, Aadhaar still has a lot of BD decline. There are payment systems where BDs are still very high. And so if you look at all these four areas, what, Sanjeev ji, sorry, I'm bringing this discussion back to you. I think what I really wanted to bring in are some top 3, 4 ideas, some guidance that we can look forward to as we look for, as we move ahead in our journey on digitization. Broadly in the discussion, we've discussed, I think, four key areas. One, of course, is on the policy side. You spoke about GST, you spoke about Aadhaar, GST, and PM Kisan scheme, the disbursements that have happened over the last 6 8 months, and a lot of work that the government is planning to do. Then there are some market-led initiatives, which market has come together, be it on OCEN or it is BBPS, and some of these initiatives that have led and brought a platform-based approach, and then opened up the market for players to come and connect. Then, of course, there is this whole technology, intervention, which payment companies have brought in. From, for example, for NPCI, we are launching our soft POS, which is a handheld-based, mobile-based POS solution. We launched the offline solution for transit and low-value retail. We are also launching AutoPay, which allows you to do recurring payments and tokenization and so on and so forth. And of course, the fourth and the most critical part of it is the service delivery part. Shalini spoke about it, whether it's on commercials or what Praneji spoke about it, which was about consumer education and system integrity and those parameters. So, from all these four areas, what do you think could be the 1 or 2 most important aspects that we as payment industry or as banking industry should focus on? So, some guidance on that side will be great, right?
Yes, Nalin, that's a fairly broad question, but let me try and answer that from the policy perspective. So in terms of the policy initiatives, you know that we've been working on financial inclusion, that is to bring the last bottom of the pyramid onto the system. And that has been mainly through opening of accounts, ensuring that every village has access to financial services within 5-kilometer radius, whether it is through the bank branches or whether it is through the bank mitras, BCs or CSPs. But now I think the thrust is more and more on service delivery through the digital platform. And, Shalini ji was talking about how QR codes have been given to auto rickshawalas. You would have read recently that Honorable Prime Minister had announced the Swanidhi program for street vendors during the lockdown period. So currently we are in the process of implementing a small amount of 10,000 rupees of loan being given to about 50 lakhs street vendors. And this is entirely on the digital platform, from the word apply to the word get or disburse. And this also has a very large element of digital onboarding of the street vendors. They will be given QR codes, they are brought onto the platform, and then there is a cashback scheme for them to use digital transactions or the digital mode of payment. So that speaks volumes of the government's vision and our efforts onto service delivery through the digital platform. But also you talked about some of the market or technology driven initiatives. Let me tell you, we are trying to move towards a one nation, one card system. And this card would essentially apply across the country in various modes of transport. And there is a pilot which has already been launched. I think it's been tried out successfully. You would have also probably read recently about the announcement on Kashi, which is cash over internet, where we are trying to move from the model of financial inclusion to the model of financial empowerment and income generation. And how are we doing that? We are trying to extend loans not simply based on the traditional methods of assessment of repayment capacity. We are tracking the DBT flows online. We are tracking the cash flows so that the loans can be offered through the digital platform, through apps, and based on the DBT flows to the lowest of the rung of the pyramid that I was talking about. So broadly, the idea is to move from financial inclusion to financial empowerment, to encourage people to have regular savings and then channelize these regular savings through online platforms, which could be, for example, for a gold-linked savings account, it could be to create recurring FDs or recurring deposits for various goals in life milestones. So therefore, I guess the three things that I've spoken about, first is bring people onto the formal system, get them access to financial services through the online platform. The second was ensuring service delivery through the digital platform. And then third, finally, to make them financially empowered using the technology, for example, by extending loans or by giving them different savings products to which they hitherto had little or no access.
No, I think this is great. It brings everything together. Obviously, all the focus that has been there up till now on financial inclusion. I think now the time is to move towards a more financial empowering environment where we are able to utilize all these services and bring greater value to the lesser banked and the unbanked population of the country. Thank you so much for those words. Very quickly, I'll move on to the other panelists, and then just to get one last word from all of them. Rajiv ji, from your perspective, in these four areas, the most important thing that you think as an industry we should be looking at, maybe from a bank's point of view, and some thoughts from on that account.
So, Nalin, I think there's enough on the plate today. So,
Right.
I think we can always ask for more, but I think there's enough on the plate. What I'd like to do is continue building on applications, which, we are working on Kirana store, we're working on farmer producer organizations, etc. So the more we can actually now target, and all these applications now are multi angles. In sense, it's not just meant for payments. It's for account opening, it's for product delivery, it's for savings, it's for insurance. I think the more we can make this rich, and again, I think there's enough around, enough tools around, enough partners around to make this. You just have to propagate it, and then we build commercial models on the top because we can lend them loans, we can open accounts. So to me, I'd like to just focus on the execution of many of these initiatives already in place and ensure that we pick the areas which are the fastest to adopt, so that becomes a kind of a positive snowball for acceleration of financial services adoption.
Yes, thank you, Rajiv. I think it summarizes what is out there in the market today. And like you rightly said, it's not just about payments. It's also about how you make these payments more usable for the consumers, for the merchants out there, by enabling them to the right set of applications. And this is certainly a lot of work that's required from all of us, and build upon that. Shalini, of course, Sanjeev ji has spoken about on the policy side, and then of course Rajiv ji spoke about some of the applications out there. Specifically, I wanted to bring to you. You spoke about service delivery on technology side. What do you think are the most important thing as an industry that we should focus on as we look forward in our journey the next 2 to 3 years?
So, I think, as Rajiv mentioned, we already have a lot that we can work with. If there is one area that I think collectively all of us will have to do some more work on, would be the whole aspect of education, customer education and merchant education. I think I referred to it briefly when he was speaking. And therefore, if you can focus on that area as an industry, and kind of bring up the general levels of awareness, education, what to do when something happens, what not to do for both customers and merchants, I think that would be quite useful in this entire journey. Lots of work done already, but a lot more to be done.
Yes, absolutely agree, Shalini. I think that's an important part for us to look into. And like you were mentioning about earlier in the discussion, that it's time for us to put the house in order and focus a lot on service delivery and focus on reducing our declines, specifically business declines, and bring more trust into the payment system. Something so important for scaling up. Pralay, I just wanted to bring to you this discussion, on the technology side, anything specifically that you feel is important as you move forward, and in general for payment, given your long-standing engagement with this industry, anything that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I will say that there was a time when bankers and everybody in the ecosystem used to talk about loyalty, but I think things have moved from loyalty to convenience and ecosystem banking. So what we have to see is how the journey is more convenient for both the customer as well as the merchant, and that's the only way things will get democratized and it will get scaled. B is how to ensure that you become a part of the ecosystem. I don't have time to discuss all that, but things like there are enough vendors, enough players who are working on this kind of value-added services ecosystem, working backward integration to the inventory management, how to ensure that you make the life of kirana shop simple. Okay, and there are enough work happening on that. We all know. So and then it's not acceptance becomes a task by itself. Acceptance becomes a front end to creating a lot of backward integration to the ecosystem banking and ecosystem, his core business backward integration of what he wants to order, how the inventory will be managed, how he will have more customer loyalty information around it. Today, he doesn't have that information. Everything in his mind and in his khata. And all these e-khata and all these other apps which are coming up, how to integrate all of it together and make it convenient to the customer to have a better control on his business, whether it is backward integration or forward integration. I think that's where the real game will be played in the next, few years. So I think that's where, and this is a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for bank, for the customer, for the merchant, as well as for the suppliers. So I think that's where the next level and convenience, of course, which I talked about before, continues to be one of the key aspects.
Yes, I absolutely agree, Praveen. Now that I think we're coming to the end of our panel discussion, I really want to thank Sanjeev ji for setting the context of our discussion today. Pralay, Shalini, Rajiv, for sharing your insights, your experience, and making us a little bit more wiser than what we are right now. I think the most important takeaways for us here from the panel today are that as we are slowly getting to achieve our targets on financial inclusion and getting better on the service delivery, I think it's time now to start looking at financial empowerment and related services, which will define a landscape for the future. And I think with that, I'd like to close our discussion today. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today and being part of this discussion. I hope you'll be able to reach the targets that we set out for ourselves faster than some of the other countries now. Thank you.